Hello again, and welcome back to The Current, Real Talk on Real Topics. We are in a series, Faith and Science. This is episode number 2. If you missed last week, I want to encourage you just right away to maybe jump on wherever you listen to your podcasts and catch up, because we kind of kicked off the series talking about creation, and it was really good. So I had fun talking about that one. Yeah, it was very kind of a meaty episode.
Yes.
A lot of just very dense, but very good.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun.
And if you didn't listen, definitely go back, catch that. A lot of what we're going to talk about today was going to kind of build off that, and what we talked about in the previous episode definitely applies there. So, yeah, faith and science.
Yeah. So in this series, we're talking about just kind of the tension between the two. Again, in just general Christianity, there's this kind of idea that they can't coexist. So you have to land on one side or the other. Do you believe in faith or do you believe in science? You can't believe in both. But I think the heart behind this is maybe you can, and it's okay if you do, or it's okay if you land in a camp, whatever. It's really not that big a deal. We just feel like it's a big enough deal to talk about on the podcast.
Yes, exactly.
So we talked about creation. This week we're going to talk about evolution. And I mentioned last week how growing up in just kind of fundamentalist evangelical Christianity, the Baptist, Southern Baptist world,
Yeah.
creation was talked about a lot, and it was seemed as very kind of important. But I will say evolution is 5 times, in my childhood, was 5 times more prevalent and talked about and made into a humongous deal, more so than even creation. I'm not sure what your upbringing was like, but I know that like this was a huge issue, because this was about the time that this was being taught in schools. Like I remember junior high, there was a huge push in my church growing up, among my parents' friends, to this idea of, do we want this to be taught to my child in science class?
Right.
Huge debates, about this, and parents, going to the school and saying, I don't want my child in this class. I don't want them being taught this. And it's just there's this huge battle, this idea of evolution.
For the minds and souls of our young.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it just, this one probably more than the other two, although medicine's kind of up there too. I still think evolution, this was a big deal.
I will
to
say,
a lot of people growing up, this was a big deal to a lot of Christians.
Yeah, I will say I can definitely remember even being young and not even having this conversation really on my radar. Growing up kind of in a Southern Baptist church here, not in the South, but remembering having conversations where there was like a college-aged woman who was attending my church. I must have been, 7, 8 at the time. I'm really young. But I can remember them having conversations and saying, oh, there's some issue with this girl and what's going on, and kind of saying, oh, yeah, she's losing her faith a little bit, and she's, hearing about evolution in school and thinks it might be, compelling. And I was like, listen to this conversation. But I can even remember at that young of an age being presented with this sort of, oh, there's God, and then there's evolution, and what are we gonna do, right?
Yeah,
Satan's getting a hold on the minds of the people, with this evolution business.
I remember even as a teenager, like in youth group and stuff, they were really trying to build our faith to defend against evolution. So they were saying like, when you get to college, you don't have like a firm grasp on like what you think. Like,
you're right, yeah.
Evolution's gonna creep in, and like you're gonna dismiss God completely, and you're just gonna start believing in evolution, where you came from monkeys. And it was this huge fear, of just like my upbringing of that Darwinism and evolution was just gonna, destroy me.
Yeah, I thought Jesus was great until I got to college and get introduced to Darwin, and then it's all done.
Yeah,
it's all done.
Yeah. So, as we talk about this, obviously, the main 2 camps, we try to break it up into like the most general kind of thought process. Obviously, you deny it completely, I would say. Probably like there is no evolution. Probably one camp, evolution is not a real thing, which I have a hard time getting there.
Yep.
It's one of the camps. The other camp is you really believe that like humans have evolved. Like the reasons humans exist is evolution from monkeys, apes, however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a middle ground where you can say, I believe in evolution, but maybe just not humanity is on that scale. I don't know.
Sure.
You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
like
yeah.
humanity's not part of that, but
Exactly.
there's been other species that have evolved, and sure, evolution exists in science, but not humanity. So maybe there's three camps, but I don't know.
Yeah,
There's just some tension, I would say, like in this idea of how did humans get here?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. What are we? How do we get here? Yeah, I'd say broadly you can look at three camps. You have like creationists who are like, yep, boom, God just spit
Human
out
beings.
these species and humans
Boom.
as they are. Yeah, creation from nothing as they are, distinct
Yep.
species, all that sort of stuff. On the other end of that creationism, yeah, you have evolution, and I would say kind of like understood as in naturalistic terms. There is no God. There is no, being or anything sort of directing or guiding or having intention beyond the process. Really, sort of natural evolution is just that, yeah, there's matter and species, and, through mutations of genetic code and survival of the fittest, we begin to see, this slow process of evolution of life. I'd say in the middle there somewhere, then you have the theistic evolution camp, who wants to say, yes, evolution was the process through which we see kind of a diversity of life, but that there is theism or there is a God involved in that process, directing it, guiding it, and this is the means through which this God decided to create and have diversity of life. So, I mean, really, we're probably talking about the first and the third here, right? Is God just, we're going to be in agreement that there is a God involved in this sort of process. We're just going to take that for granted. There's a whole nother conversation there. But yeah, the question is, did God just, boom, poof us out here?
Yeah.
Or is there some sort of process of evolution involved?
Yeah, and we set this up by saying this last week, and we should just set this up by saying it again. This really isn't a huge deal. Again, Christians fight over this. It's not something to fight over. It's really not. We can disagree here. With that being said, you put me on the spot and asked me last week, if you were to have to choose a camp, where do you land on this one?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I do want to start by saying, yes, I can't think of another topic to my mind that gets as heated as this, but that also doesn't matter as much as this one doesn't matter. Like for me, I can think of things that Christians get more intense, but I think this is what we get the most intense about for a topic that doesn't matter the most. I always want to tell people at the end of the day, whether it's creationism or theistic evolution, what does it change ultimately? What difference does it really make? There's a couple things and some stuff to talk about, but on the whole, we're in agreement that there is a God that has brought about this life, and there would be no life without this creator God, and that there is something unique about the human species created in the image of God, all this sort of stuff. Everything stands. So for me, it's just why all the stress, why all the headache? That being said, if I had to put myself in a camp, I'll tell you what, this is probably one of the harder ones to do. I sort of started out in a position of like, well, duh, like evolution's not right because obviously it's that or Christianity, and Christianity's right, so evolution's wrong. And I kind of operated in that. And then I kind of had well, hold on, maybe they can coexist. People who espouse evolution are not dummies, and there's actually some great science and some great thinking that goes into this. And it has some explanatory power. And so I was thinking, okay, I mean, there's some good evidence here. I will say in the last few years, I've kind of swung back around in the middle and feel as if I'm in a spot where I think evolution and just kind of Darwinism in general has some explanatory power, but I think it has some issues too, some holes as well. So all that to be said, I'm not really sure where I land. It kind of depends on the day. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that evolution plays a part and maybe leans slightly that way. But I'm not as sold by it as I used to be.
Yeah, I'm very similar.
Yeah.
I could probably just repeat what you just said, and
probably
pretty close to where I am. I just think there's I think there's just some validity and power to this idea of likeness of God, like being created in his image. That's over and over again kind of a theme throughout the scriptures, is this idea of just us being created in his image. I think there's something there. We were kind of talking about this earlier. I think there's something to be said about love. I think there's something to be said about consciousness. I think there's something like humans maybe experiencing other things that other creation doesn't.
Creatures, creatures
don't. consciousness, and it gets into a lot. But
Yeah.
I'll just say, like, I think there might be a few things in my mind that humans experience that other species and creatures do not. I'll just say that, and I don't know where that puts me, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be open to the idea of, like, somewhere along the way, other species we find out have had similar, understandings, and
Yeah.
whatever.
For me, it doesn't, again, where I find myself landing is, it doesn't matter. And I'll be honest to say, this is not my direct area of, like, study or expertise. It's not where I spend a lot of my time, because I haven't felt, there's not a lot of payoff either way. It's like, if I became very solidly convinced that evolution is a thing and that, like, that's the method through which God created, like, or if I became very solidly convinced that, nope, it is creationism, my life doesn't change much, my theology doesn't change much, not a whole lot changes. So I haven't, deep dived. But I will say, for me, what we're really needing to safeguard is the idea that, yes, there is this creator God, that there is, something unique and special about the human species. And whether or not that's because, God spit us out like this, or because through the long, slow, careful process of evolution brought us about to this state, to me doesn't matter. I can see God kind of working. He is the patient, slow, long-suffering, working over millions of years to kind of produce this and struggle with creation. I could totally see that. I can also equally see, Adam and Eve, boom, human, unique species, something unique. There's something simple and beautiful there too. For me, I guess, the big point to get across is that at the end of the day, like, we can coexist. This doesn't have to be the heated battle that it gets made out to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, obviously in my mind, I think about evolution. Literally all I picture is just the chart you always see of, like, the like, boom, 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 boom,
slowly
like, this
becoming
is the
more
progress
upright.
And I think just a helpful understanding would be, like, there is a little bit of middle ground there. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be just like that. But again, I'm not a scientist, just like you said. This isn't my field of study I'm an expert in. But from what I understand from science is that evolution has occurred and is continually occurring. This, so even if it's not just, so let's just take humans out of the equation, but if evolution is happening in the scientific world and it can be studied and it can be looked at and tangibly, like, seen, like, evolution is happening in the natural realm. It's okay if you have this view that it could potentially happen with us, and because if God has made it to work that way, like, again, it's just one of those things where, like, I'm not completely opposed to that either. Like, I'm open to it because we see it in the natural world already.
I just don't think it's an unguided, accidental process that's just kind of happened to be unfolding, if it is happening, and I think for me, microevolution or seeing the diversity of genes and how that works, like, I think that is demonstratable, and I think a level of evolution, I think it just needs to be granted, and it doesn't bother me at all. For me, it's the macro level. Are we seeing moving from one species to the other, or really the idea of, like, can we demonstrate the concept of universal common descent? And I'm just not totally convinced. I'm not totally convinced, but
and I think a more, like, practical conversation for us and, like, the listeners would be, so we can't really go much deeper into that. I mean, we've kind of shared what all we think about it, but I think more practical discussion would be, so if you are a parent or you're concerned about education and what we're teaching our children in schools and how science and faith relate, and you say you are a Christian, but I don't believe what is in the science books, or I think a helpful approach with your children, or just kind of if you're influencing youth or whatever it may be, if you're really concerned about that and education realm, like my parents were with me and the people around the church that when I was in was a really big deal. I think what a more helpful dialogue and discussion for me as a teenager or me as a child would have been focusing on the most important things in my faith, not something like that. Because there was this immense amount of fear.
Yeah.
Like it was unintentional. I'm not saying that people in my life were like intentionally putting that fear on me.
Yeah.
But I lived with this massive fear, like that if I wasn't able to defend, like if I was not a true like apologist, like being able to like just completely like defend my faith at all times, I was less than, my faith would crumble, and I would just encourage you, like, just emphasize the most important things of our faith, which is loving God and loving others, and all that other stuff. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't be thinkers, and like don't hear that either. But I think if you're really concerned about that, like, just focus on the most important things, and like a faith will stand. Like, again, we should be thinking, we should be logical, we should be able to defend our faith. I'm just saying there was a lot of fear and guilt and like just stuff thrown on me where it was unintentional. I should say that too. It wasn't like people are being mean. I think I would have benefited much greater from those people spending the same amount of time talking about the love and character and nature of God and the grace of God, and just really emphasizing the true things we know about God and his character and nature. And like that is what I always tend to come back to and fall on in my faith, not being able to defend against evolution.
Yeah. I think that's so good, and I hope people hear this, that when we take these sort of issues and make them a make or break issue when they don't need to be, we're going to end up with a lot of people that have broken faith that don't need it to be. When you set the stakes of theism evolution so high, I think we have a lot of young people who are like, well, I've been told, the stakes are high, it's this or that, and I go in and wow, these are some smart people, and this sounds like it could be good, and they don't have a framework and an ability to say, it's okay for me to question and grapple and do that, and they're like, well, I guess, this whole Christian thing. If we don't set the stakes at that level, if we equip people to go in and have young Christians ready to hear and engage with these things, and also realize like, oh, there's more wiggle room than we think here, we're just going to save a lot of young people a lot of headaches and heartaches and concern and fear. Let's make sure Christianity has some stumbling blocks, and I have some things I want people to trip over. Evolution's not one of them. If people are going to stumble over something, let it be Jesus, that's something to trip over.
Exactly.
But
it's
whether or not we came from monkeys, to me, just isn't one of those.
Yeah. And if you're watching, you'll see we're in the same clothes. We had a conversation between episodes, so we just recorded our creation episode that you listened to last week. But even Prudence was saying, like, one thing that she loved about the last episode was we talked about how the point is, like, creation happened. Like, let's just how it happened isn't necessarily important, but like, we're here. Like, what are we doing now? And the same thing is true of this one. Like, where did humans come from? How did humans arrive to like what they are today? The reality is, like, we're here.
Yeah.
We're humans.
Now what?
Now what?
Existence is
like,
here.
That is the most important thing. Like, okay, how it happened, cool. Everything had happened, all right. Right now, we're human beings. What are we doing now?
You got to wrestle with it.
Yeah.
Like, existence,
and I get, again, some of those things are important, like talking about those things and like whatever. But like, I just wish, like you were saying, the stakes wouldn't have been so high for me, because I always felt this pressure, this guilt to like be able to defend my faith at all times against, the Darwinism
affronts. Yeah, exactly. And I think just to have a healthy, for me, in my like young zealous Christian days, it was like, man, I was hunting for every heresy to find and like defending the faith against this, that. And as the years go on, I think, this is my experience, maybe it isn't for everyone, I hope it is that you mellow out a little bit.
Yeah.
You chill, you hang out, and you realize, certain things aren't such a big deal. We don't need to make them a bigger deal. And I think we don't do service to people outside the church when we frame the conversation this way. I think when they look on the outside, they're like, wow, here's a bunch of people who, don't believe in science or whatever it is.
Yeah, it becomes two camps where both think the other is stupid.
Exactly,
Like Christians think people that don't believe is stupid, and then the people outside the church who aren't Christians think people that believe that are stupid, and then just like you get into your camp, and both opposing views are stupid, and there's no like way to like come together.
And I never get the chance to tell them about how awesome Jesus is.
That's right.
How great he is. We never even get to have that chance, because this has just been a stumbling block, something that comes up that just doesn't need to be. So if you're someone that's listening and you're wrestling with this, know that 1, it's okay to wrestle with this. That 2, where you land on this debate or topic ultimately doesn't have a lot of impact on our Christian faith. Take a deep breath, realize that it's okay. And it's okay to not know.
And I'll say, at the end of the day, if you're a very practical, logical person, how humans arrive to be humans, at the end of the day, has to be a theory. It's like the theory of creation, the theory of evolution, the theory of Darwinism. It's a theory because really no one was around that's like a modern thinker or studier of what is they don't truly know. It is a theory.
Yes,
it
is,
and it's okay to be a theory.
Yeah, it's okay. This is a scientific hypothesis, and it does have some explanatory power. It's not devoid of anything good. You can believe it and be a smart, intelligent person. Believe it or not, you can reject the theory of evolution and be a smart and intelligent person too. And finding ways for us to be able to have this dialogue and a discussion, I think, and what we always do in this podcast is say, hey, how can we have this kind of a conversation and realize it's okay to not be on the same page here. There's some space.
Yeah. We need to bring people on to the podcast that disagree with us.
Be good. Yeah. And I think allow people a chance to see too. Yeah. And at the end of the day,
what healthy dialogue looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's
definitely not being modeled on social media.
No.
Or in our culture really at all.
No. And that's, oh my
we'll
God.
do that.
We'll have a whole nother conversation on, culture and
we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll have a whole series on debate.
Yep.
And topics that are controversial.
It'll be good.
Because we did Calvinism a few weeks ago too. And
we sure did. We got some good debates. And
we should have brought a Calvinist on.
We should have.
We
should. Next time.
It's all good.
We still got one more great episode lined up for this. I don't know. We might have trouble finding someone to it'll be a good one next week talking about
what's kind of important now because I'm just the issue of vaccine.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into it.
That's been a big one amongst Christians, and we can probably dive into that a little bit next week too. But
for sure.
I think
medicine,
vaccine falls into the line of medicine.
Yeah, should we as Christians be embracing that sort of a thing?
Yep.
And if you want to know the answer to that, the definitive 100% answer, you better tune in next week because we're going to give it to you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks, Curtis. Always appreciate your insight. It's been another episode of The Current, Real Talk on Real Topics. We'll see you right back here next Friday. Thanks for joining in. Grace and peace.